Welcome back. Another in our series of what's going on in the community. We find ourselves with a treat today. We've got Corey Odom, currently running for Supervisor of Elections in Washington County, Florida, the county in which we find ourselves today, here in beautiful Chipley, Florida. When we come back, we're going to talk to Corey about just exactly that. What is the Supervisor of Elections, and maybe what are the duties that are encompassed within that job title? I'm sure that you have questions. I know that I've got lots of questions about that job and the role that it plays within our election process. When we come back, we're going to talk to Corey about all this and more, and we will be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Corey Odom. Thanks very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
You are declared as a candidate right now for Supervisor of Elections in Washington County, Florida, county seat Chipley, in which we find ourselves today. That's a pretty heady office, and I've got lots of questions. First of all, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and excited to get my name and my face out to people so they know who I am.
We give the opportunity, Corey, every 2 years during those election cycles to every declared candidate within the sound of our voice, and we're online, so it could be literally any place as far as we're concerned. We have people come in from the local level, the county level, the state level, even the federal level at times. Matt Gaetz has been on, Jimmy Petronis. We've enjoyed Neil Dunn. We've enjoyed a lot of the sitting politicians. Mm-hmm. What I find most interesting, however, are some of those more local offices, Supervisor of Elections being one of those. I have people all the time ask me, what exactly does the supervisor do? And I have to admit that I don't know the answer to that. Let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little something about Corey Odom. Okay.
Well, I'm Corey Odom. I have lived here in Chipley since 2002. I've worked in our community at the Wellness Center doing physical therapy and with other avenues of therapy as well. Like I work with Kindred at home. I've had the opportunity to go out and meet a lot of our residents here in our county, and I love helping people. I have a servant's heart. I do like to serve people, to help people, make life easier for them. And this position as Supervisor of Elections, I believe, would help me in another way to serve people of our community.
You know, I can't imagine entering any political position at any level without that commitment to doing just that, being that servant. Regardless of what the pay scale is, I just don't see any win to it at all. You have to be able to take solace, take comfort, take the joy of being that person who is being of service at that point. Because at any given time, 50% of the people are going to dislike whatever you have to say. There's just no win in most cases.
Absolutely.
And I don't know that for a fact to be the case in Supervisor of Elections, but we're going to find out maybe a little bit more about that position now. Supervisor of Elections, correct me if I'm wrong, mandated by the state, every county in Florida, and we have 67 of those, obviously. Every county in Florida must have a Supervisor of Elections, probably not dissimilar to the rest of the United States, but we find ourselves in Florida, so let's address that. The pay scale is set by law. The duties are mandated by law. There are certain requirements. I imagine there are certain things that you as that supervisor can do to be more proactive. But at the end of the day, you sort of have a framework set up and standards by which you must conduct yourself as set by the state. Would that be adequate to say?
Yes, it is. Your number one job as a Supervisor of Elections is to do just that. You supervise the elections to make sure that everything is done correctly by the state mandates. If there are any changes in dates or changes in precincts, then you inform your county, letting the people know where these places are going to be held. Also, you educate. Education is a big part of the Supervisor of Elections office also. But I would say the number one thing, like I said before, was just to supervise the elections. It's kind of a pretty good. It's a no-brainer for what you do. There are parts of the job that I know that I'm not familiar with yet. I have read what I can, but if I do get this position, they do send you for education. You go every other month in your first year, and they partner you up with another supervisor of elections, so you're not thrown in there by yourself. You do have someone to help you. There's a great staff that's already in place at the Supervisor of Elections office, and I believe they're great assets to that office already. But you know, any position you go into, you can read all you want to, but until you are in that position, you don't know everything that that your job is required.
Yeah, on that hot seat, if you will. We have elections every 2 years. This year we find ourselves going into a presidential election cycle. A little more complex, certainly lots of drama going on. People argue that it may be one of the more important elections that we face in our lifetime for many reasons. We won't get into the political side of it, but nonetheless, it is a presidential cycle. That means that we have a presidential preference election, then we have a primary election, and then we have a general election. So for all practical purposes, you have 3 elections coming up.
Yes.
What is the presidential preference election?
The presidential preference election is coming up. It is actually on March the 17th here in Florida. Early voting will begin by the state March the 7th through the 14th, but each county has their right to choose dates before that if they would want to. I'm not sure if our office is or not, but I know they will be open for the early voting. This is for Democratic and Republican, so everyone needs to get out and vote. Just don't take for granted that the person that you want is already going to be on that ballot. This is kind of like how we have the primary for the general election for our county. This is the primary for the presidential election for the November one. So it is very important to get out and let your voice be heard for this first preliminary election that we have coming up soon.
Now, this is simply to pick who will be that party's candidate in the general election, is that correct? Yes,
that is correct. So if you are a Democrat, you will choose your Democratic person who you would like for the people that are on the ballot. The same thing for the Republican or nonpartisan. This is where you get to choose who you want to represent your party of choice for the general election, November the 3rd.
Now, each of these 3 elections has an election day, and we'll talk about those specific dates. You've already mentioned March 17th. I wonder if St. Patrick's Day has any kind of a influence over this preferential election cycle, being it is held on that day. You mentioned, though, early voting. Each of these election dates has an early voting block of time prior to the actual election day itself.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the importance of that early voting.
Well, with early voting, it allows our elections office to not be slammed with getting votes on that one day. I would encourage as many people as possible to participate in the early voting or your absentee ballot if you have one, if you've chosen that, to get that in, to make it easier for your supervisor of elections office so everything can be accurate. And if there has to be a recount for some reason or another, it would be easier because they will have everything already there. So this is a service to us here in our community to be able to do early voting. So I would encourage each of us to take advantage of that. I mean, I know some people, they want to vote on that day, and that is fine. That is absolutely fine. That's your choice. But with there being the early voting, it does provide more opportunity for you to come out. Some people can't wait in long lines. Some people, the weather may be bad one day. But take advantage of that. If it is a nice day and you're able to get out to your where the early voting sites are going to be, and take advantage of that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but to my understanding, there's 29 days prior to each of these elections. The stopping point, 29 days prior to that particular election, that would be the last opportunity to either change your political affiliation or to just simply register to vote.
That's right.
Talk about that.
Okay. You have 29 days before each election to either, number one, register to vote, to update your address, to verify your signature, or to change your political party if you choose to. For the presidential preferential, it is actually Tuesday, February the 18th is when you're able to do those things in order to vote. But in the primary coming up, August 18th, you can register to vote 29 days before that. Another thing that's important about the registering to vote 29 days before is we have children, I say children, the youth that maybe turn 18, let's say August the 1st, which means that's only 17 days before. Well, that's too late for them to vote unless they go ahead and pre-register. Any 16-year-old that has their driver's license, I believe, because you have to have that identification, can pre-register to vote. And that way, if they do turn 18 on August the 1st, their pre-registration automatically change over to registration, and that person will be able to vote in that primary election or the general election if they don't turn 18 until right before November the 2nd or November the 1st. Then it will all roll over and they will be able to vote in that election.
First-time voters, an extremely important voting bloc. Many politicians fail to recognize the value of that group. Obviously, a very young group, sometimes with not as many life experiences as you would like for them to make such a heady decision as voting for whatever the office may be. But nonetheless, a very large group, and that first-time voter may be coming into that process a little bit starry-eyed, not quite, and has never paid an electric bill, or maybe paid rent, or even paid to do their laundry at any given time. Definitely different perspective. What have you got to say about first-time voters?
Well, first-time voters, I'm sure it can be intimidating. It was for me myself, but I think that's where your Supervisor of Elections office comes in play. Education, starting younger with the children, even in elementary school, and explain to them how important it is to vote, and then to middle school, going a little more in depth. So by the time a child becomes a young adult and old enough to either pre-register vote or to register to vote, hopefully they will have been educated enough by the elections office that they can make the right decision. The education that I would like to provide if I am chosen for this office is I want, the young adults to not just register to vote one way or the other because that's how their parents have voted or that's how their grandparents have voted. They need to look into each party and make that decision for themselves. And I would like to help educate them on, lead them to the information, not my opinion, but what the party stands for just by looking it up or giving them avenues where they can read about it themselves and making sure that they are educated and letting them know it's okay to ask questions. If you don't know, just ask someone. There are plenty of people around that will help you make a decision.
It seems that many of these constitutional offices on a county basis or a county level beg to be non-political, without party affiliation associated with it. Sheriff being one of those, but Supervisor of Elections, by the very nature of its job, it would seem that it would almost be a non-partisan position. Your job is to get everyone involved in the process.
Absolutely. To
get as many people as possible so that you truly get a reading of what the popular vote is.
That's right.
If 10% of the people vote, then 10% of the people are making the decision.
That's right.
Your job as supervisor is to engage as many of those people as possible. And you even mentioned getting them engaged as early as 16 so that they're ready when they hit that 18 mark. And yet it is a partisan position. How do you feel about that?
Well, I agree with you. I think it should be nonpartisan. It is a position that I don't push my beliefs on anyone when they come into the office. My job would be to get them to register to vote no matter what their beliefs are. That is their choice and that is their right. My responsibility is to make sure that they exercise that right and they have the opportunity to exercise that right. I think the more people that vote, then you have a better grasp of what your area wants and how they believe and how they think. I think it should be nonpartisan, but I don't make up the rules, so I just have to play by them.
Unfortunately, the date that we find ourselves today, when people get to see this video, it will be too late for them to register to vote or to change their party affiliation or to do any of those things that you mentioned prior to the presidential preference election.
Yes.
But obviously, we have the primary election and the general election square in our sights right now.
That's right.
As do all the major candidates, and obviously that's getting to be quite a show in and of itself. This year, the primary election happens on August 18th.
Yes.
So that means that right now, if somebody is interested in changing their party affiliation, changing their signature card, just getting registered to vote, certainly the best time to do it. And with the presidential preference election going on first and foremost with Super Tuesday and all of the news, great opportunity it would seem for the supervisor to get the attention of those who may want to make those changes.
Absolutely.
A great opportunity to piggyback, if you will, on the other news that's going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would hope so. That's what will be happening in our office. That we, right now, is to really encourage people to come on out. If you did miss it for tomorrow, for the 18th, but go ahead and either go online or go to the office, and ladies there will be glad to help you to get you registered to vote, so you can be ready for the next election coming up, because it is important. It's our right, but you have to let people know how you feel. It's just like if you're anyone in a relationship. If you don't tell someone how you feel, they don't know. They can't react. They can't help you. So it's the same thing with voting. If you don't let your leaders know how you feel about things, then they can't help you and they can't react to it. So, don't be silent. Let people know how you feel.
Obviously, following the primary election, we have the general election, which happens this year on November 3rd. After which, then there's nothing but cleaning up whatever mess happens to be, depending on your political outlook. All that said, one thing that you said that really strikes a chord with me is the educational component.
Yes.
When I was a kid in school, both in what they used to call junior high, which is now middle school, and high school, we had civics classes. We had problems of democracy. We had classes that explained all of that process. And I don't think that we do, certainly I know we don't do a good enough job. I don't even know if we do any kind of a job in working with that. Chris Patterson, circuit judge here in our circuit, comes on a regular basis and talks about just that, the civic side of things, your responsibilities, your duties as a citizen. How easy it is to complain about that rough road you're going down until you really understand where the money's come to repair that road, and how good a job our leaders are really doing with what monies they have to work with. But about the educational component, what do you see as your job as Supervisor of Election? And you don't necessarily have to go into extreme detail, but thumbnail sketch. What do you see yourself doing in the way of education that will help the effort?
Sure. Well, starting in elementary school, just letting them know that we do have the right to vote. I'm not old by any means. I mean, I'm older, but I'm not old. But I can remember hearing stories from my grandparents of when their parents weren't allowed to vote, or my great-grandparents. But so it's still kind of real to me that it is a privilege that I do get to vote, and it's a right that I have. But children of today, I think it's like all of us, we take it for granted. We take for granted the cell phone. How does it work? We don't even think about that. We just know we pick it up and it works. It's kind of like the same thing with voting, because it's nothing that they've had to do before, and they don't really grasp, because no one that they physically know has never not had the opportunity to vote. So making them aware of that by just doing little simple things with them, little activities. And then as the children get older into middle school, start explaining the Electoral College and how it works, doing mock elections with them with different things. And then, of course, into the high school, really stressing to them. We talked about it in elementary school. We talked about it in middle school. And it's just repetition, just like anything we learn. The more we repeat it, the more we know. And just letting them know how important that it is their future, and I vote now for me and for my kids. And, when my kids vote, when they come their age, they're voting for themselves, and then they will realize one day they're voting for themselves plus their children. And just letting kids kind of get that into their mind to think that our country is great, but if we don't let our voice be known, who knows what's going to happen, one way or the other. And so it's very important, and I just really want to stress that to them.
Yeah, in the past I've made the statement that if you don't vote, you can't complain, and people have taken issue with it. It's my God-given right to complain, and I get it. You're right. You're exactly right. I give up. I'm not even going to try to go down that road. My personal belief, though, is that if you do not engage in the process, if you do not try to understand and participate in that process, then you have less opportunity to gripe about it after the fact. I believe that by voting for somebody, I'm giving them my proxy. That means that whether it's a county commissioner or the President of the United States, I am saying, I am voting for you. You are going to be my representative. I can now go about my business, and you're not always going to do what I agree with, but I'm hoping that by voting for you and by doing my homework and voting for you for the right reasons, not as a popularity contest, but rather as doing my homework,
that's right,
that you will do overall more than not of what I would like for you to do according to my philosophy and my lifestyle. We have many different lifestyles these days. We have more opportunities for people to be upset about life. I still believe that when you vote for somebody, you're giving them that proxy. That doesn't mean you don't participate. I love to see a crowd at the county commission meetings. I love to see a crowd attend the state senate meetings. People have to be aware. They have to want to be aware. What can you do, and you mentioned a little bit about your educational effort in that office. What can you do, what real effect can Corey Odom have on helping people to understand the process, to getting more people engaged? At the end of the day, what ability do you have as supervisor?
Okay. I want to go back to one thing real quick about people voting and not voting. You hear, well, my vote doesn't count. Well, our city mayor won by 6 votes. 6. So your votes count. And people say, well, mine cancels out. Well, you don't know. Yours may not cancel out. You may be one of that 6 that helps somebody win, or the 17, or the 1 vote. So it does make a difference when you do vote. But going back to what you said, or what you asked me, I think for me, what I can do is, number 1, with the education. Number 2 is to make it very easy for everyone to come and register to vote, for those to change their party affiliation, to update their signatures. I'm not going to expect people to come to the office. I have plans to bring it to them, bring it out to our entire county, no matter where you live. That's just what it is. I am here to serve our county. I know a lot of people don't look at it as a big deal, and maybe it's not to some, but being able to help people to get to where their voice can be heard, it is a very big deal to me. I haven't always been in the public light, here, but I've always been involved in the background. People don't know it. I wasn't involved in things to get recognition. That may hurt me now just because people don't know, but that's okay. I didn't do it for the recognition. I did it for the right reason. But now I am stepping out into the public light and don't want to be in the back per se anymore. I want to be out in the public where people can see how I am here to help. I really am. Any way I can, I want to help people.
Is there anything about the office in general terms that we haven't discussed that perhaps come to mind for you? I invite everyone that has declared as a public office candidate to come on, but we also give you the opportunity to come back. So if everybody always leaves and go, I should have talked about this or this. But is there anything offhand that comes to mind that about the office itself that perhaps we haven't addressed?
Just the hours. It's open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. That's the hours now. I believe that's set by the state. And the ladies there in the office, I've met with them and talked with them, and they're very helpful, and they will help you any way that they can. You can also, if you don't want to go to the office, if you don't want to drive to Chipley, you can go on the Supervisor of Elections website, and you can register to vote there. You can ask for an absentee ballot. Just about everything you can do in person, you can do there. Online, if you have any problems, you can call them, and they'll kind of help you walk through it while you're online as well.
Very good. Thanks for that information. We give everybody an opportunity to look right into the lens and to speak directly to those to whom you're appealing to support you in that office. So if you would like to do that and explain exactly why they should vote for you, we'll give you that opportunity.
Okay. Well, I'm Corey Odom. I'm running for Washington County Supervisor of Elections. It is very important for you to let your voice be heard, register to vote, no matter what your affiliation is, if you are nonpartisan, if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. Just let people know how you feel. Go out, register, and then exercise that right and vote so people know. If you have any questions, you can get up with me, or through Paul can let you know how to get up with me, or you can probably contact the Supervisor of Elections office and they can give you some information as well. Thank you.
Well said. Thanks so much for taking the time today. I know that you've got a busy schedule. You're working a regular job and campaigning at the same time. Makes it a little bit tougher.
Yes.
But best of luck going forward.
Thank you.
We will be contacting you and giving you another opportunity sometime prior to the primary, and then should you have to go to the runoff in the general, then obviously we'll give you another opportunity then. So again, thanks for taking your time. We understand that you're extremely busy, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
If you're an announced political candidate for any office within the sound of our voice, and being that we're online, it could be literally anywhere, we'd love for you to take advantage of this opportunity to come tell your story, tell people why they should support you, why they should vote for you. And even if you just want to talk about politics in general and you're not running for an office, we'd love to have you on. This is a public affairs program. We like to keep you aware of what's going on. We particularly look forward every 2 years to the political cycle because there's some interesting stories, Corey being one of them. Don't forget the presidential preferential election is on March 17th, which happens to be St. Patrick's Day this year. The primary election is on August 18th and the general election on November 3rd. Vote early, vote often, as they say, but get involved, get registered to vote and become a part of the process. As I've heard Corey say, be involved, be a part of that process. Don't be a part of the problem, but do your part civically. We'll be right back.